Hi Valkyries, welcome to our channel. I'm Lindsay.
And I'm Sophia. Welcome to the House of Wind Book Club.
This is the Valkyrie Reading Room. Saturday we started A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J Maas, and this week we are discussing chapters 1 through 10. But first, we wanted to go ahead and mention that we are sipping on Harney & Sons Citron Green Tea as our tea of the week.
And I'm sipping on that right now, and by itself, it's a little bitter, but it still has a lot of flavor. And I like sweet stuff, and Lindsay does too. So I added honey and 2 spoons of sugar. She added 4.
Yeah, I'm just a crackhead who likes sugar, so it's like 3.5 to 4 scoops of sugar in my tea.
Yeah, but it's really good. The citron comes off as like a sweet lemon once you add a little sweetness to it. And
It's a good fresh tea.
Yeah, it's not something heavy. And it's not caffeinated.
I don't
It's a green
believe
tea,
so.
right?
Yes.
So it's a very, very low caffeination, if anything.
But if you're a person who really, really likes green tea, great. If you don't like green tea, it will taste like grass without sugar. So
Yeah. Yes. Sorry, I just choked on it a little bit.
that is okay. Shall we get started for today?
Absolutely.
All right.
I have personally read every single book from Sarah J Maas, so this is going to be a reread for me for the first time. On the other hand, Sophie has not read any of the books, so this will be her first time, and you will be joining her as she reads this book.
I've heard many things, and I was intimidated, and I tried to read this book once, and I got to chapter 3, and I stopped, and I regret it, because reading up at chapter 10 has turned out to be the game changer that I didn't know I needed. So I'm excited.
And unfortunately, she is being dragged by her ears reading this book. So I'm 100% admitting that I am forcing her to read this, and so all these are going to be 100% her real reactions, and I can't wait to get started as we continue through this journey of the books and so on and so forth.
Exactly. And she is pulling me by my ear because I had a hard time looking at it and reading it in the physical form. So I have adapted, and I've picked the Audible book, and I'm going off of the dramatized version. And we're already noticing differences, and we're going to address that as well.
And I am personally reading it via Kindle, and I'm also reading the audiobook from the narration of the Kindle, and then I'm also rereading the dramatized version so I can understand where she's coming from and where she might have missed it, so then we're all kind of being on the same page, instead of it being, well, I don't remember this part, well, this part actually did freaking happen, so on.
So on and so forth, exactly. And the dramatized version is what's really helping my interest stay focused because of the extra outside influences. So she'll help set me straight if I have something wrong. And I'm more than excited to figure out what's going on.
Interested but falling asleep when she's supposed to be reading the book.
Long days. Okay, you understand. You know.
Yes. And so everyone knows as well, we are coworkers who became best friends, and now we're doing a book club and everything. So when we joke around about our long days at work, we actually mean at work because we both work together in the same office.
Although we've been separated.
Sorry, my bad.
I know. It's self-inflicted, but it's needed. But yeah, so every once in a while, as she yells at me about falling asleep, it's because I'm really, really tired, man.
So we're going to go ahead and get started. We're still trying to get used to how we want to do these things, so please forgive us. We would like to request that you subscribe and leave comments for us so we can start to grow our community. And, we would eventually like to go live where we can have our subscribers ask questions during our lives, and so we can join and build a community that is friendly. And this is a safe space, so we do request that, you leave comments that are not hateful, and
everyone remain kind, and if there is any discord in the chat, make it remain polite and peaceful. If there is any dissent in between opinions on anything.
And also, we did originally start on Fable, so please feel free to search Valkyrie Reading Room on Fable and join us there as well. So, shall we get started?
Let's do it.
In chapter 1, the book opens in a snowy forest. Our narrator and protagonist, a young woman named Farah, is hunting for food for her poverty-stricken family. She is farther in the forest than usual when Farah finally spots a deer.
Dear array, oh dear. I totally messed up the order of those words. Wow.
That's okay, we get it. As she draws her bow, she notices the glowing eyes of a huge wolf. Because of the wolf's size and stealth, Farah wonders if it is a fairy from Prithian. She has an internal battle whether or not she should shoot the wolf because, and the book is quoting, if it was indeed a fairy's heart pounding under that fur, then good riddance.
What big teeth you have, wolf.
Good riddance after all the kind has done to us. The wolf attacks the doe, and Farah shoots the wolf with an arrow made from ashwood, which is rumored to have the power to kill a fairy. She debates whether to bring both animals home for their meat, but decides against it as it will lead predators straight towards her. She skins the wolf and uses its pelt to carry the doe home.
Oh, geez. I want both carcasses too, I guess, but she's a young girl. She's not pulling both a big wolf and a deer at the same time.
Well, and you have to remember she is also skinny and starving and probably has no muscle to her, so I don't even know how she carried that deer home herself, because I myself, who has no muscle, bigger girl, plus size, I wouldn't have been able to carry that.
No, that... Did she have a horse?
No, she doesn't have a horse yet.
That's... Okay, so...
Obviously, we'll get further into the book, we talk about horses, but no, her family doesn't have a horse. She carries that thing by herself.
God, and she kept... No, so... She kills both of them. She is only inkling at the thought that the wolf could have been fairy, but she has no actual discernible, proof yet that it was.
No, absolutely. She thinks that it's a fairy because of its stealth and size and its glowing eyes, but that was her only inclination that, who knows, it could be a fairy.
It didn't give any other inclination that it had either higher intelligence or the opposite effect. It acted like a wolf, just a little uniquely colored or kind of uniquely
its characteristics.
Yeah,
and I do want to correct you. So the wolf attacks the doe, kills the doe, and she kills the wolf.
Oh, that's right, Brett. That's right, because she shot the big arrow at the wolf.
Yes,
and then she just takes his kill. That's kind of rude.
I'm sorry, but just me. It's. If you thought it initially was a fairy, what gives... I know she wants the fur, she's trying to make it think like an animal, but my good conscience, if it's a fairy or something, semi-human, could you skin it?
Here's the thing. I think it's that plausible deniability of she doesn't know for sure, so she can convince herself that, A, this pelt can, because they're impoverished, can bring in enough money to help with her family, and... It's right there. She can't take the entire thing with her. She needs something. And it was going to kill her dinner anyways.
Yeah, and she does say that in the book, that the wolf was going to basically shred it to pieces.
Right. So it was either kill the wolf and hopefully get something out of it, or let the wolf get the doe and have no dinner for her and her family. Or what she did was kill the wolf.
I did like that she was at least smart enough to use the pelt to wrap the deer up so it wasn't bleeding and not towards her and her family.
Yeah, that way we weren't...
I did like that she was smart about that. I can't think of the terms I wanted to use.
Yes, I like that, but then it's that ominous about leading something back, but they don't tell you what they're gonna lead back. Foreshadowing, because they don't say it's gonna be just regular predators. It could be...
It just says predator.
It just says predator. It could be any type at that point.
That is true. So, given the chance, would you have shot the wolf?
Yeah, honestly, I would have if I was in that situation where I was the one everyone depended on to feed, and there was an opportunity where I had the chance to be able to feed them for a period of time. I would try. And if I failed, I would have booked it out of there.
Language, dear.
I know.
That's YouTube.
That's why I corrected that. Hell can be redeemable.
double hockey sticks.
That's true.
Or heck.
Heck. Heck damn.
Anyway, personally, yeah, I probably would have shot the wolf as well, just because it's like, you want to try to save as much of, as Farrah says, she doesn't want to say, you want to save the fat and the meat and everything that is consumable on the doe. So, yeah, let the wolf kill it, but, you know.
Don't let it eat it.
Yeah, exactly. I personally probably would have shot the wolf too, given the situation.
Moving on, in chapter 2, Feyre returns to the cottage that she shares with her father and her 2 older sisters, Nesta and Elaine. Their family lost their fortune 8 years earlier when their father invested in a disastrous business venture across the sea. Her father now walks with a limp due to his creditors assaulting him and resulting in shattering his leg, which young Feyre was actively present for, her sisters hiding in their room without her. When their mother died, she made Feyre take a deathbed promise that she, the youngest daughter, take the responsibility for the family and take care of them. When Feyre returns home from her hunt, they feast on the venison and plan to ration the rest of the meat. Feyre plans to take the pelts to the market in the morning, and her sisters are already planning and dreaming of the new clothes with the money she will receive. Over dinner, Feyre and Nesta argue over Nesta's love for a man named Thomas, a woodcutter's son. Feyre reminds Nesta that they do not have a dowry and they will more than likely make a burden of herself to his family. Out of spite, Nesta accuses Feyre of having a lover named Isaac Hale. Meanwhile, her father encourages Feyre to let Nesta believe in a better life, but Feyre retorts that she believes in no such thing.
And we're going to go ahead and apologize if you hear any scratching or groaning. Our dogs are both in the room with us. One's on the bed right next to the microphone, and the other one is across the room, but is very itchy. So we apologize for that. But yeah, so chapter 2.
Yeah, it's definitely a good chunk of getting a lot of backstory with understanding where Feyre's...
World building.
Yes, world building. You're understanding where Feyre is in her life right now. Like, you're introduced to her family, who they are. You get a feel for the dynamic in the family, as she's the youngest daughter, but she's the one expected to provide for her family, to provide food, provide money, to provide the necessities that her father, the adult, as well as her older sisters who...
Yeah, it's the family burden, even though it's not her burden as the youngest child.
Yeah.
She has a disabled father and entitled sisters, absolutely.
Yeah, and they do not make it easier on her. As we kind of mention, as they talk about rationing the meat and how they're going to sell the pelts, and her sisters, all they care about is getting a new pair of shoes or a new cloak, while Feyre herself, her clothes are falling apart.
Yeah, she even says that her shoes are being held on by, what was it, threads, I
Threads,
think.
like, there was, like, almost holes in them at that point.
Yeah, and her sister, I just need a new cloak because it's cold. Okay, well, what about my feet? I don't want frostbite on my feet.
And she's the one that's actually going out into the woods trying to provide for them, being able to catch small things usually, but not this time.
Yeah, and I do like that we do at least get to understanding of, like, my father is, disabled, and this is why he doesn't do it, but I think she does say, like, I don't know if it's this chapter or the next one, but how he talks about she doesn't want him begging because...
Oh, it's a little later.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking.
It's a little later, but they do touch upon how, with the injury, they did see the loss of him being able to work, and how he can only do small little things like wood carvings that were not physically taxing, and she had a thought that they were afraid that they would have to do that, but I don't think we address the true, impending fear of it actually going to happen in the near future until later on.
Yeah. So, I guess now that we're 2 chapters into the book, how do you feel about Feyre, and do you think that she is likable as a protagonist?
I like her because there are flaws to her already, but it's not flaws that are like contradictory to the type of character that she is. She is a strong character. She is young. She has all this responsibility on her and this and that. So she's very independent. She's taking the lead. She's bossing around her entire family pretty much to keep them alive because they can't seem to keep themselves alive.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it makes a very interesting character because she has a lot of hard edges, and you can see that already because she holds her tongue, but the thoughts she thinks, she definitely does not like the way she's treated, but she sucks it up because she made a promise and she doesn't break those promises.
I agree, and I do like that we see that, especially like she wants to hold back her tongue, but she's like, Nesta, can you please go cut wood because we have 5 pieces left. You promised, but you didn't do it.
Right, she's trying to make them take care of themselves and the family at the same time, and telling them, this is your chore, go do it. Why does she have to be the one to tell her to go do it? I have siblings, so I understand the frustration when there's something everybody needs and someone's supposed to go do it and they don't goddamn go do it.
Which I think we all have siblings. I have a younger brother personally, and I don't live with them anymore, but yeah, growing up, that I feel it.
So I like her. I can see where there are areas of her personality where they're definitely going to clash with certain types of people.
Absolutely.
And I'm kind of excited for it because she seems like to hit it straight on, and I want to see her break someone's nose. I want to see it.
So, yeah. Yeah. Break someone's nose. Great. And just so you know, I am the oldest of 2,
and I'm the youngest out of 5. So, and I'm the girl, and they're all older brothers. So, I really do understand the younger daughter kind of mentality a bit. It's a little different because I'm grateful I honestly didn't grow up with sisters. I feel in my household that would have been even more disastrous than 4 boys and 1 girl.
Yeah, and so like I obviously I've read the books, and I love Feyre as a character. She's one of my favorite heroines, but as an older sister, I do see the Nesta. We'll see that in book 5, obviously, because I've read it before, because it's a Nesta book. Mm-hmm. So we can get the background on why Nesta is such a...
Why she is the way she is.
Why, yes, thank you. I was going to say a naughty word. So just so you can kind of understand how we see Feyre in our view, how we relate to her, and why we like her so much as a character already, and
right.
Only 2 chapters in. Right,
and from her perspective, coming from the older sister perspective, she can see at least the sister perspective, because sisters are sisters. With both me and Lindsay being sisters, we can at least imagine this sort of relationship, because between the 2 of us, we only have brothers, but the sibling relationship that Feyre has with Nesta and Elaine is very different. Like, Elaine and Nesta together are very, very close.
Yeah, they're very much, they have their own clique.
Yeah, they're very much leader and follower kind of mentality. Yes. Of it, with Nesta, the older sister, and the younger sister, and they very much leave Feyre out and only kind of use her as either scapegoats or ways to better their whatever situation they're in at that moment, whether it be better chores or better clothes or better food or whatever she can provide them.
Yes.
Which is kind of sad.
Yeah. Especially since she is the younger sister, and she does bring up that, like, I don't understand. I don't remember if it was this chapter or later in the book, but she's like, I didn't understand why I was
the one being asked of this.
She couldn't tell if it was because she had how did she say it?
This was a little, I think it's a little further, but it's something along the lines of why...
She couldn't tell if it was because of the fever that she was asked, and she just wasn't lucid
enough
to realize it was her youngest daughter. that she was making this promise to.
Or she knew exactly who she was
Yes.
talking to.
And so I think that also is kind of interesting as well, that how she brings that up.
I think that has to do more with the fact that the older sisters were already comfortable in their very rich and lavish life before their poverty and this and that, and before the fall, and they had not adjusted well. But Feyre was young. She was really young. She doesn't remember.
Still very impressionable.
She's watching all this happen. Her family is being upended, and on the mother's deathbed, she knows the most adjusted to the situation at hand of their poverty and their seriousness, unfortunately, is the youngest child. Because the two oldest daughters have been babied and spoiled so far to where they don't believe they have to do that work, I guess, almost.
Yeah, I don't want to say brainwashed to the not fancy, whatever the hell you want to call it.
The royal, kind of like the...
Lord ladyship lifestyle.
Yeah, where they, it's unladylike for a woman to cut wood or this and that. Or
yeah, Feyre doesn't know that yet, because she's talking about, like... Anyway. Sorry. Before I go off on a tangent. But, yeah, so...
I completely lost where we were going with...
I'm sorry,
squirrel.
But yeah, so... so I guess we could end that Feyre tangent, and guess we can move on.
Move on from there, yeah. So that was chapter 2.
In chapter 3, the three sisters walk down a snow-covered road to the village. A member of the Children of the Blessed stops them to talk about the High Fae. The sisters dismiss her, as they are not interested in the worship of the Fae who once ruled over humans. Feyre decides to approach the mercenary instead of a normal shopkeeper at the village, with hopes she might receive more money. The mercenary offers to overpay for the pelts in a paying it forward fashion, as someone once showed her the same kindness. After Feyre is paid, the mercenary warns Feyre not to venture too far into the woods, as she has heard rumors that fairies, or fae, were crossing the wall. Despite the treaty between the Fae and the humans that was brokered over hundreds of years ago after their war, there had been an increase of fairy attacks. The mercenary begins to show Feyre scars from her run-ins with them, but Nesta butts in and drags her away.
But one thing to also mention is when she observes the injuries from the fairies, she's almost in awe.
Yeah, like inspired.
Like she's almost like she has an artistic mind, and she's taken with the beauty of the veins, the black veins from one of the bites from the fairies. I think it's from her on her leg, and the black veins that come all the way up that never goes away, and how stark it looks against her figure, but it's so beautiful in its like branches. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was so interesting, because she's so afraid of the fairies, but at the same time she has that...
Intrigued. She's very intrigued about it.
Yeah, she can't help but... She can't turn off that artistic part of her brain that appreciates something even in its scariness.
Yes. And so Feyre gives her sister the money that she gets from the pelts, and she says she'll see them home, but ends up going and finding her lover, Isaac. She returns home to have dinner with her family, and while the family is sitting in the main room after dinner, they hear the roars of a beast as it bursts through their front door.
And it ends on a huge cliffhanger right here, and in the dramatized audiobook, I almost screamed.
It scared the crap out of us.
It
was in other words.
Pure growl. It was not like a human little growl. Like, it sounded really deep and guttural, and it freaked me out because I was doing my hair. It was morning time, man, and I stood there in shock when I heard that, and it definitely got the effect they wanted. It was definitely an eye-opener.
Yeah, I did find it kind of interesting with the Children of the Blessed.
Yeah, they're interesting.
Obviously very cult-like, and
very
brainwashed.
They almost made me think of, what am I thinking? I guess regular cult behavior, but I'm thinking of a particular one, really. Okay. I don't even know if this is technically a cult now that I thought about that, so I'm not going to mention it. But just the idea of these people are either taken in as young children or are convinced at like younger adulthood to believe that the fairies are actually there to help them and to
Godlike.
they're there as like beings of good, and that they're not harmful, and that they're held above us humans. And all that. It's very interesting because when faced with questions about the assaults that have happened between the races, they don't ever acknowledge it. They'd never acknowledge it about how
They only want the good, they don't want the bad.
Exactly. They're not willing to, when faced with the reality that fairies do kill humans, they don't ever acknowledge that part because they only want to acknowledge that if they are good, if they worship them, they'll be fine.
They'll go get married to a high fae instead of, which is
Commoner that's and they're gonna
possibly die.
die from just frickin' starvation. Like, at this point, this area is super poor, and these types of, like, organizations in general, in life, they target these types of areas because there's nowhere else that hits rock bottom more than the poverty line.
Yep. And I think my favorite part where Nesta just wasn't having it and Farrah has to basically pull her away instead of punching her in the face, because you were starting to get those vibes like Nesta was like, okay, one more BS word from this lady and I'm gonna knock her teeth out.
And it's so stark because Nesta acts like a very proper lady, but in that moment with her spouting all that nonsense in her mind about the fairies, she was 2 seconds away from brawling, and Farrah almost, like, the tinge in her thoughts as she thought it was almost pride of being like, I didn't even know she had it in her to, like, actually get that mad and actually almost hit somebody.
And I'm not going to say anything else other than foreshadowing. So, because, like, I'm going to say it again, I have read the entire series, but Sophie hasn't, so all I'm going to say is the word is foreshadowing.
I'm excited because I love characters that you don't expect to hit somebody. That's, like, my favorite thing in the world. The shock, the awe, the incredulous, like, thoughts that happen all in the above. So I'm excited to figure that out. But in general, this chapter begins very much leading into something you don't really realize, and we don't even know what's actually happening right now.
I also like that this chapter kind of showed the other world of like people's different views on the Fae. Like right now we just have Farrah's family on how negative, but then we see this kind of worshipping kind of view of the Fae, and then we also kind of get the mercenaries view as well, where it's like, yeah, she has the hunter vibe just like Farrah, but it's not as almost negative as Farrah and her family.
There's much more of a kind of passive kind of approach to how the mercenary kind of talks about it, where, yeah, she killed it when it attacked her.
Yes, versus Farrah, where it was unprovoked.
It was, the wolf was going to eat her meal, but it wasn't attacking her. And this was something that was so, like, in the audiobook, it felt forced. Mm-hmm. They paid very special attention to this, and we'll kind of see why. But it was definitely something I'm kind of glad in the dramatized book that they really did focus on emphasizing this little thing that could be swept away, but holds true information in it.
Yeah. So what do you think actually happens to them across the wall? Do you believe that they get married to High Fae? Do you think they end up dying once they hit the wall? Do you think they get attacked and eaten? What do you think?
I think it kind of matters on how they're getting across the wall. Like, if they're actually being, like, chauffeured across the wall by actual Fae themselves, that they're being led in there by them, I think it can go one of two ways. They are looking for a workforce, and they're being kind of led in on the promise of love, but hey, we can house you, we can feed you, this is easier, why don't you just kind of stay here and kind of work for us? That honestly sounds like something like the high people do. Or there's nefarious things going on, but there's no which way to go or kind of decide what they could be doing, because we don't know anything other than the fairies that do come into the humans' territory do attack. But there are leading thoughts about how there are different types of fae with differing levels of intelligence. So there has to be a higher level that has a higher ability to, like, reason, and although, yes, there are different species, like, there has to be, I don't know, like...
Yeah, we really never really learn, personally, I feel like, in the books, we never really learn what happens to the children of the blessed. That's kind of why I asked the question is, what do you think? Because personally, it's like, I don't know if the wall kills them, because they talk about how, like, the wall ends up being, you know, it's this mysterious, like, it's not an actual wall, like, it's
a boundary.
Yeah, it's a boundary, and it's a magical boundary, so it's like, we don't know if the boundary kills them, we don't know, but personally, I think that they are able to find holes to the wall, but I think they end up dying before they get to their final destination, essentially. So that's how I personally feel, because we never learn.
Yeah, and I would say that if they're not being led through, I feel like the border, the kind of portal between the worlds, I guess, I feel like if they're not led through, definitely something bad's gonna happen. Mm-hmm. Because it's not their realm. You're going into another part of the world that's now physically separated by magic. It's going to have consequences if you're not led by something that's already accustomed to it. Mm-hmm. So whether they're dead or they're enslaved.
Yeah.
Like, because they could be the unseen... They could be the house elves of the frickin' like, high court, for all we know. Just unseen work labor that hides magic, and they just do everything, and no one really knows about it, because magic. Everything's explained away by magic. We don't know.
I still think they're dead. I don't believe it, because we never... Because we have that one that's like my sister or whoever got married to a high fae, but it's like... But did you confirm it? Because, like, do you have a letter? Like, did you ever receive a letter saying that, you know?
Or did you ever see him?
Yeah.
Like, did they ever come back over?
Yeah, so I feel like there's a lot of... Children of the Blessed has a lot of, like, there's so much open world things that Sarah J Maas, like, could do with it, but at the same time, like...
Do you think she will?
I don't think so. I honestly, personally think they're dead. I think that was kind of, like, the close end, like, they just die, like... I think they're dead.
I feel like that would be an interesting, almost, like, prequel to this series a bit, where just getting, instead of the views, where most of these, main characters, they're not favoring the fae, are they? Right, they're not. Having that almost separate view, I feel like this is either a plot device that she is willing to, like, go further with, but she just wants to fully flesh out, like, the anti in full rainbow color, and then go for the complete, like, little just let's the sneak peek to what actually happened, this and that, whether it's something interesting or even if it's like a little small little, like, shorty little story, like, what's the word like a little short story of, like,
a
just
novella,
there we go.
Yeah, but I honestly I think we're not ever going to see anything about that. I think it's more
plot device.
Yeah, where we have the super negative, and then we have, like, God worshipping.
Yeah, because there's always someone freaking worshipping a supposed higher power.
Yep, and we do need to see that eventually in the book. So I think that's the only reason why we have the Children of the Blessed, because of
it just seeing
plot device.
Yeah, that stark contrast, and kind of getting the mental idea of how some people can worship these beings, even though most are still afraid of them.
Exactly.
All right,
so I guess we should move on to chapter 4, huh?
In chapter 4, it opens up as the golden beast stands in Feyre's doorway. She grips her hunting knife, a meager defense against this beast. It's the size of a horse that resembles a wolf and a cat, with curved horns, large claws, and sharp fangs. Feyre knows that this beast is fairy. As the beast yells, "Murderer!" Feyre's father, Elaine, and Nesta huddle in fear. That was a good one.
I have to clear my full freaking throat so badly, too. I was trying not to do it mid.
Ooh. So the beast wants to know who killed the wolf and who will pay the price for the treaty's demand of a life for a life. Feyre confesses to the unprovoked attack, and the creature gives her two choices. Instead of a life for a life, die now or return to Prythian, the fairy realm in this world, and go with him forever, to never return. Her father begs and offers gold they do not have to keep her with them, but Feyre agrees to go, planning on escaping in the near future. But before she leaves, her father tells her not to return and make a name for herself somewhere new. Feyre mounts a white horse and follows the beast into the woods towards the border. And that wraps up chapter 4. It's the highlight to the burst in from chapter 3, kind of giving much more information in this chapter about the dealings between fairy and human, and you learn a lot more of the nuances other than just the fear that the humans have and the prejudice on that end. We kind of see, although a dark side of fairy, we do see their point of view is finally introduced to this book.
Yeah, or they see the fairy as the villain, yes. Sorry, I was trying to comprehend what you said. I'm in food coma now.
You're good. We just had dinner, so...
we took a pause between these two chapters and had dinner, clarify.
Yeah. And so, I think it's very interesting in this point because, yes, he is portrayed as the villain, but his actions don't really portray that. His voice, his demeanor, his kind of presence is aggressive. It's angry. But he gives her a choice. It's grief. It's grief. It's anger. He's going through... He had a connection to the wolf. And even with that, he still gives her the choice of mercy. Or perceived mercy in Feyre's case.
Yeah. Even though it doesn't really seem like it, she, even when she's like, don't kill me here, like, kill me outside so my family doesn't have to clean my blood. Like, she even tries to barter with Tam, the beast.
Right. He's not introduced. His name's not known yet. But you see that he's mad and he's upset and this and that. But when he looks at Feyre, and she's the one that says, I killed him, he's shocked.
Yeah, because she's a scrawny little girl, and versus Nesta and her father, I honestly, like, in my head, I perceive them a little bit more
filled out.
Yeah, filled out, well off compared to, like, being the provider. Like, you always hear, like, how, like, mothers and fathers let their children eat first.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I see it. It's like she lets everyone else eat first, and she always takes the smaller portion. So I don't think she's as well off. So I can absolutely see how Tamlin would be shocked. Sorry, the beast, not Tamlin.
Sorry,
it's Tamlin.
His name is Tamlin. But yeah, it's so interesting too, because in the beginning, the father tries to beg for her life.
Yeah.
Like, he's begging for with gold he doesn't have, and
which is exactly what Feyre doesn't want him doing.
Because
begging.
And that's what we mentioned it in chapter 2. I think it was, or 3. One of a chapter, or the last chapter, or the one previous, where Feyre's one thing she didn't want them to do was beg on the streets for money. That's why she became the provider, why she took on that responsibility. And with her having to leave, she's terrified right now of
how they'll survive.
And the promise that she is now unwittingly breaking because she is being forced to leave. And her father is telling her to leave and never return now.
Yeah, which is interesting. Like, it's kind of interesting how much she almost doesn't want to leave her family, but like, how would you feel if like you're obviously like the provider and you literally are told not to come back? Like,
you feel useless.
not
Like,
only
you feel
useful,
like...
but I'd feel betrayed by my family.
Yeah.
Like,
You feel like...
unappreciated. Like,
Yeah.
all my work I was basically for nothing.
Exactly. And she recognizes that too, where she knows that they're not going to appreciate that she's gone until they're wanting.
Mm-hmm. Until they need something, or you're right, absolutely wanting something. So
That's also something that it's so interesting that she's thinking about all this. She's just worried about making sure that they're fed, and now she's being forced to leave, and she's just trying to barter her way out, but there's no way. The beast is standing there saying, die now, or come to Fairy and live out your life.
come to Prithian.
Prithian, I'm sorry, I keep saying that like that. Come to Prithian and live out your life, not to die. And he's very clear about that, to live her life out there.
Yes, later in the chapter he does clarify, or not in this chapter, but he does clarify later in the...
He does emphasize it again,
Yes.
that, like, he did say live.
Yes, he's like, I live here, not die here.
Yeah. So, it's very eye-opening, because the villain is the villain. But he shows mercy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so funny because Feyre is supposedly she is our protagonist, but she's the one who showed no mercy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where already it's showing parallels of, okay, are we to trust what the bias that everyone thinks is right? Is this the right thought now? Or is there something else brewing under all the conflict of the societal, like, people and the attacks and all of the above?
I just can't wait till we read more of the, if we read more of the books, where you actually get to see more of the because obviously this book is like full of foreshadowing, so I'm like, I just can't wait till you actually get to read more of it.
I know, I had to stop myself from going further, because the dramatized version doesn't really keep track of the chapters the same way, and so I had to kind of figure out where certain chapters ended and started, and, like, especially here, it's very... the chapters blend together so seamlessly. It's very interesting in the audiobooks, where it's hard to tell when one starts and one finishes unless they say it out loud.
Or there's like the magical, like,
pause.
Yeah, like when she wakes up in the morning in the manor, there's like in the dramatized version, there's a little like tune before it plays, but that's later in the book.
Yeah. Do we have a question?
Yeah, the question for this chapter is, did Feyre really have a choice when Tamlin offered death or life in Prithian?
Yeah, I think she did. Because she already kind of made it, and Tamlin kind of made her change it. She was already accepting that she was gonna die.
Yeah, it was yeah, because it's kind of weird, because, like, he didn't want to kill her.
No, he seemed very, very reluctant to. He gave her the option, and when she offered for him to just take it outside, he didn't want to do it.
He didn't like that answer.
He didn't like that answer, and I think coming from a young, skinny, impoverished girl telling her, go ahead and just kill me outside, that's a huge kind of, like, perspective.
She doesn't even beg for her life.
No, she's not begging. She's not trying to... well, she's not really begging. Like, she comes in there, and she's almost on... like, he comes in there screaming murder, and she grabs a knife. She's about to fight for her life, but she's not denying her actions.
Yeah.
She doesn't lie because she knows the fairy don't lie, and she doesn't know if they can tell if she lies, so she's trying not to piss him off anymore, because it wasn't her intention to really piss them off. It was, okay, this is a fairy, they terrorize us. It could be a fairy. We don't actually know if it's a fairy. These are all the thoughts she was thinking as she killed it.
Yeah.
And he's mad, and there was a choice in what he gave her. He actually didn't even let her take it.
Well, I think it's also kind of foreshadowing for book 2. I'm not going to say too much about it, because obviously,
Foreshadowing.
Yes, I'm just trying to... That's all the words you need to know is foreshadowing.
Okay.
But, yeah, it's just... it just lines up Tamlin's character, so you see it already in the beginning. Like, obviously, when I first read the books, I didn't catch it, but like now that I'm sitting here talking about it, it's kind of interesting seeing it line up.
Now
Like,
I'm so curious because I honestly feel.
I'm not going to say anything other than that because but it's just like that's kind of like the first, I'm going to say red flag Tamlin has.
Okay, good, because I don't know what it is, but listening to the, like, because I was going between the regular and the dramatized audiobook, there is something about him. I don't know what it is. She knows what it is. I have been really good about not understanding spoilers, so I don't know what's going on. But he's weird. I feel like the way he approaches things, it's so contradictory that something's going on in the background or underneath his mind somewhere. Something else is brewing.
Yeah, and I don't know if you've caught it yet or if you've heard yet, but Avatar is actually based off of Beauty and the Beast.
I can get that.
So so you can kind of see the parallels of the story versus Avatar and everything. So you can kind of get those vibes of why he's kind of being weird and why he's, basically flirting with her, trying to flirt with her after rusty 50 years or whatever the number is.
It's 50, 70, something like that, where they're
49 or something like
that.
that.
They're stuck in the masks.
But anyway, that's later in
that's
chapters.
A little later.
But yeah, so that's kind of why you can see the parallels. Now that I tell you that, you can kind of understand the parallels of what we've seen so far.
Yeah, where he comes off very, very aggressive and very monstrous, and he's pushing
just like Belle does when she gets locked up in the tower.
Yeah, where he's trying to make her be
a
prisoner, be scared, be fearful, fear him. He's a monster. He's very much pulling intimidation factors with his animal form in this encounter, and I think it's interesting to see what becomes of it later on in other kind of interactions.
Yeah. But like I said, foreshadowing, because I know everything that happens in the book, so foreshadowing.
Foreshadowing. I don't know, I'm lost, but I'm intrigued. So this was chapter 4, and
as Feyre rides through the woods on the creature's white horse, she does not regret killing the fairy. While she thinks of the terrible legends she has heard growing up and how no human has ever returned from Prythian, she also tries to get information from this creature. Still, she worries about her father and sisters more than her own safety. Feyre notes that she smells metal and proceeds to fall into an enchanted sleep. She wakes up as they pass through what looks like the manor's front gate.
And this is chapter 5, and it's kind of that bridge that separates the beginning in the human realm and Prythian, where the story really picks up.
Yeah, that's what I was telling Sophia when she's like, oh man, I'm having such a hard time getting through chapter 1 and 2. I'm like, you just have to get to chapter 5, it'll promise you that's the real start of the story.
Yeah.
It's all world building, chapter 1 through 5.
Which, now that listening to the audiobook, it was much easier to get through that. So if that is something that you guys are having an issue with, is kind of starting the book, start with the audiobook. If you're not used to that, just use it as that kind of crutch for the first couple of chapters until you get sucked in, and then carry on through the book, because I've done that enough times where some intros are just so long that listening to it is easier to comprehend. But I'm so interested, because even in this small chapter, there were little hints.
Mm-hmm. But this chapter kind of, like, it was really just like a filler chapter, because it's like Tamlin creature doesn't exactly give you any information, and he's just like habita magic, shut it the heck up, please.
Right, but it's interesting because she kind of recognizes it, and I think that's interesting because she's human.
Mm-hmm.
How does she already instinctually kind of know what that metallic smell, taste?
Well, I don't think she realizes it until
after the fact.
Yeah,
but she does clock it.
Yeah, in a different chapter, she's like, oh, this is what magic smells like, because I've recognized this because this is what happened to me when I was on the horse, which was later in the 10 chapters that we read, was when she was sitting down eating.
Okay, that's kind
of when she's like, oh, magic smells like metal.
Okay, because in the audio of the dramatized version, they don't really kind of touch on that, but they do make it obvious when they make the mention that they're connected.
Yeah.
So I think that's interesting. Something that was small that was left out which I guess is almost meaningless, because it does still convey the information either way when you don't outright say it. Because yes, she has it happen, and then it's almost like in one of her side thoughts in the next like 2 chapters, it does get brought up again in conjunction with it. So I think it's interesting. The audiobook is kind of making you think a little harder about imagining it instead of just laying it all out.
Yeah, that's like I said, that's also another big reason why like I ended up reading the dramatized version on top of the audiobook, because it was like I needed to understand what you were getting at, because I compared it to like what my Kindle was saying, and I was like, okay, we're missing some spots, so I probably should let her know that.
Yeah, and so with the chapters I've read in the dramatized version, I am going to go back and listen to the full book to kind of fill in the blanks. But the audio book, the dramatized version, does stick to the storyline, I think a good 75%.
I would think a little bit more. I think it's
like 80 at least.
Yeah, like 80 to 85%.
Like they just kind of leave out pretty much these small little things that you can kind of bridge in the audio, but if you didn't have it out in front of you, you wouldn't know.
Sorry, excuse me, I'm trying to hold in a burp.
That's okay, because I'm in the middle of hiccups as well, which is why that weird gap. Oh, geez. But in total, this was chapters 1 through 5, and this was the beginning. This was the true intro to this story of Feyre kind of adventuring into Prythian and unfolding what her life's going to be and what is going on, and
world building on top of everything else that we're learning about.
And she knows it all, and I'm excited because I don't know what's going to go and happen, and I feel like there's a lot of things that could happen in this that I don't know.
So far reading chapters 1 through 5, what is your predictions for the book?
I think somewhere there's going to be a love interest. I don't know who it is. I don't want it to be Tamlin, only because I think there's something fishy going on, but I feel like he's an easy character for her to latch onto, because he is like right now he's an enemy, but he hasn't hurt her. He hasn't really truly threatened her either.
Other than trying to kill her when...
But, in his defense, if we're going to devil's advocate, it is the treaty, it's a life for a life, and he does spare her. And he wants to spare her. He's the one who pushes it.
That is true.
So, but at the same time, why? What about her is so different from every other human that dies? There's something weird about that. I feel like there has to be something that he just kind of notices, and that's why he decides. I think that there's something to that where he unknowingly notices this and then realizes later, or something along the lines of she's just going to do something, or he just kind of, I don't know. I think there's a plan somewhere, or even not even a plan, but just like unconscious motives going on that I don't really know where it's going to lead her, but I feel like she's going to be led into traps.
Good foreshadowing.
Really?
Good foreshadowing.
I don't like that. I read too many of these types of books, so I can kind of guess certain plot lines, but I don't really know where that's going to go, and I'm kind of afraid for the love interest parts, because I don't know who else is kind of in the running, and I don't want it to be Tamlin. If it is Tamlin, I'm kind of scared, because I'm already, like, worried about it now, and it's already the beginning. And I do at least know that he is fairy and he becomes human, so it's a possibility. So, I don't know.
I just love that you basically kind of guessed how this book is going to end without
Seriously?
it kind of ending. I'm like, I'm not going to say too much, but
Damn it.
You are right with the traps, and you are right to feel
Wary.
apprehensive and wary about the relationship.
Okay, good, because I don't know what it is. I think it might be because the trope is so obvious.
Yeah, and also, it's Beauty and the Beast. So
it's Beauty and the Beast, like, in its full entirety. So I love Beauty and the Beast. That was
we all love Beauty and the Beast. We're all readers here.
That's true. But that was my Disney movie out of all movies.
Same. I used to fall asleep watching Beauty and the Beast in high school. I used to put it on my old school Dell laptop and put it right next to me, and I'd watch it, and I would literally watch it until I fell asleep. And it was like literally the first scene where they're singing the bell and I'm already asleep.
Oh yeah, my dad used to tell me that, like, out of all of my siblings, he would play certain movies to kind of help us like settle down and this and that, but my movie was freaking Belle. And in particular, he said, even as a baby, and it was true foreshadowing, anytime that library scene came on, I was just amazed at the freaking screen.
I think we all want the Bell Library at one point in our life.
At all points of our life.
I just can't wait to have my own house where I can actually have, like, a whole room just to books. And I have plans for said library. Hopefully one day we will be able to feel more comfortable reading and doing our thing on screen. So we can have, like, a whole setup and everything. A whole scene. Not scene. What is it called?
Setup,
Set.
It's
a set. Set up. Oh, we're close.
We were close.
We'll have a whole set so we can have...
It'd be put together, and so it's not just in wherever space we're using, because we're kind of going to be probably hopping around a little bit.
Yep, and so, like, we're obviously going to apologize now for the audio, because we attempted to figure out our mics and everything, and it just didn't go very well. So we're currently just recording off my iPad and just talking as we would as friends, just with the voice memo app, and we're doing what we can until we can get paid again and get some new microphones and
kind of spruce this up a little bit.
Hopefully sound better, because obviously you can hear the AC kicking on and the dogs barking and itching and stretching themselves and blah, 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 blah. But
in general, us being able to, like, do it this way is nice. And this is what we kind of do want to carry along, that feeling of being able to talk like we are just in a friend group and we're just shooting the freaking... I'm not going to finish that phrase. But in that sense of, we're all sitting here reading this, and we love being able to, like, actually connect with people and talk about this and get other people's perspective. And that's why we're doing this, is we want to, confer with each other and kind of get the basis. She already knows, but I'm excited. She loves how crazy I'm getting about the spoilers that I want, but I'm gonna get eventually at this point.
And she's having such a hard time sticking to just the chapters, so we've only read up to chapter 10, and maybe, I think she read into, like, maybe a minute and a half into chapter 11, but she is so frustrated that I'm not letting her read more than the time allots, because we still have to wake up for 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, which we'll probably do maybe in the morning or something. We haven't decided yet.
Yeah. But here's the thing. I'm a binge reader, okay? Yes. So I like finishing books. I like sitting down and devouring them. So this has been a lesson in patience for me.
But I promise it is worth it.
It's honestly really interesting, and it is making me think about it, like, over time, about all the little things, which is nice, because I normally don't get to this part of a book until the second or third time I've read it, because I am a rereader as well. But
let's get into chapter 6. Feyre arrives in Prythian. It's beautiful and impressive, but eerily quiet. She learns that magic smells like metal. She thinks of running, but she knows she won't succeed due to her hunger and weakness as a human. She's surprised by the luxury of the manor house and plentiful familiar food available. Although she's starving, she refuses to eat, as she's been taught that accepting food from Fae allows them to turn humans into slaves. The creature who brought her to the house turns into a blonde man, whose face is mostly covered with gold and emerald mask. He is a high Fae, similar to that of a higher class species. He tells Feyre she's not a prisoner. and she can live anywhere in Prythian. Another fae with long red hair, a gold fox mask with a facial scar and a fake gold metal eye enters. He's shocked that a girl as scrawny as Feyre killed the wolf, who was their friend Andreas in disguise. Lucian is angry, but the blonde fae instructs Lucian not to harm Feyre. Alice, a servant in a bird mask, takes Feyre to her room and gets her bathed and dressed. Feyre clearly is not comfortable with the dress that Alice puts her in, so she returns and brings her pants and a tunic. The peace and calm of the manor shocks Feyre after all the negative legends she's heard about Prythian. Alice warns Feyre to be quiet, listen, and to not trust her senses, though she does encourage her to stand up for herself against Lucian.
Yeah, I loved that. Apparently, Lucian needs a attitude check.
Yeah, and he needs someone to spar with him verbally.
Yeah, because clearly he's not getting that, so it almost seems like he's abusing the servants who just.
Yeah, it's just picking at them, needlessly annoying them. He needs some type of entertainment, and one thing to also, like, he is a high fae as well,
Yeah.
and to show that you're not willing to, like, be walked all over.
Yeah.
That's also kind of the undercurrent of what Alice, I think, is trying to say. Also, is don't let them walk all over you. Keep quiet, look, listen, learn.
But don't trust.
But don't trust them. Don't trust what you see, hears, because this is the land of magic. This is the Prythian. This is where magic and everything's plentiful. So not everything is as it seems.
You're not in the human world anymore.
Exactly.
Quote, we're not in Kansas anymore, Toto.
Dorothy.
But yeah, I feel like this chapter kind of also ends up being just like the tiniest. We get some more information from Lucian, who we forgot to put in our little summary here that Lucian is the red-headed fae. I noticed that when you were saying that, I was like, oh, I didn't write that part down. So that's who Lucian is. Lucian is the red-headed fae who wears the fox mask, and he is a sassy one. I forgot where I was going with that, but
yes, and the blonde man is
Tamlin.
So he's the one who brings her in, and he's the blonde man, and he's kind of, you get a feel that he's the leader here.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Like, it's never really said.
I think it's said in the next chapter.
I think it's in the next chapter, but right now you don't even need to be told. It's already like showing in the subconscious clues of the other characters deferring to him almost.
Yeah, and I don't think it's mentioned yet. You know, I think it's mentioned in the next 10 chapters that we'll end up reading. But Alice is actually a lower class fae. She is not high fae.
Right.
I don't know if I don't know if you caught that. She's a servant and she's a lower class fae.
Okay, so are there high class fae servants?
I think they just employ lower class.
Okay, so it's usually like of the lower class, though. That's a job that's mostly just like that. Yeah. They're slotted into, kind of.
Yeah, I think so, because they obviously, you know, as servants you have to still make money for your family, and we learn later in the book that Alice is like a tree fairy, so her skin is like made of bark.
Okay.
And she's a darker colored fae, but she actually has 2 nephews that she cares for. So it's like you still have to care for your family and those kinds of things. So it's not like I don't think it's an enslavement.
It's not true.
What's the other word?
It's in servitude almost, where it's like it's where.
Sorry, the dogs are with us on the bed again, and hers just decided to. He's a pit bull, so you know pit bulls like to push around. They like to bully you around.
Yeah, he's pushing his leg around and nudging me with his butt, but. Beyond that.
But yeah, no, I don't think it's in servitude. I think it's in between in servitude and, you know, between
like a
job. Yeah.
Like almost like a butler servant, like employment.
Yes, there's an employment end, but like we don't really know because it's obviously we're focusing on the high fae, so we don't really know if they're getting paid to do those jobs. I hope so. I hope that.
Or at the very least, if it's not payment, at least if it's just the necessities needed for them to live, like food and shelter, and like providing food, shelter, water, clothes for the families that like serve them as a different type of payment. But after reading all this, what's your initial thoughts about Lucian?
I love Lucian. I think Lucian is because once again I've read all the books. Yeah, I know. I love Lucian. I think Lucian in the first couple books is hilarious and funny and the comic relief that we need. Obviously later in the books, I think he gets whiny, but that's all I'm gonna say. I think
some
he
male
gets whiny.
characters get that way though. I feel
but like so does Tamlin. Tamlin gets whiny in the end of the books too. That's it. I'm not gonna say anymore. Spoiler alert. But yeah, I love Lucian in this book. I think he's the comic relief that we need, and it kind of just shows different personalities if they're not all stuck up. Like, yeah, Lucian's stuck up until Feyre puts him in his place.
Until she shows that she has a spine, and she's not gonna let him walk all over her. And then he's like, "Oh, okay. Now you can kind of actually get a view into my personality. You can kind of see into what's going on just a little bit."
Yeah.
Okay. I like him. I think he's kind of like that annoying little brother type personality. Like he wants to poke, he wants to annoy, he wants to get on everybody's nerves to achieve his own ends.
Yes.
And that's what I'm getting already from kind of his personality. And I'm kind of here for it because I love the chaos of it all.
Yeah, Lucian is like chaos embedded in this first book, because when we get later into the book, you'll understand, because there's a whole scene where he goes, "Oh my god!" and it's just like he is chaos impersonated, and when we get later in the book, it's funny as heck.
Oh, I'm gonna love that then.
Yeah,
I might have to go outside and cackle for that.
Yeah, it's actually pretty good. I do love when Lucian ends up being a little bit chaotic in the end of the book. But so I guess we should get into chapter 7.
Chapter 7.
At dinner, Feyre learns that her captor's name is Tamlin, and that he is the High Lord of the Spring Court. Feyre is still hesitant to eat the fairy food, but Tamlin explains he does not keep slaves. Feyre asks what she is meant to do with her life in Prythian and expresses worry about her family. Tamlin tells her he doesn't care how she spends her time as long as she stays out of trouble. He assures her that her family is well taken care of, even though he warns her that it will not be the case if she leaves Prythian. Though legend says fairies can't lie, Feyre believes Tamlin is twisting the truth. Lucian questioned Feyre about Andreas' death and her lack of remorse. Feyre apologizes unconvincingly. Eventually, Feyre realizes that she will magically be held at the table until she eats, so she relents. The feast is of higher quality than any food she's ever had. Tamlin and Lucian question Feyre about her life. She is puzzled by their questions about her relationship with Isaac Hale, but admits she does not love him. That night, Feyre locks her door and rigs a trap from her curtains. In the morning, the trap knocks Alice to the ground. Though Alice is annoyed that Feyre wrecked the curtains, she is impressed at Feyre's willingness to fight back. Alice tells Feyre the trap is useless against the powerful Fae. She warns her to be careful of dangerous Fae while exploring the grounds. Feyre marvels at the paintings in the hallway as she ventures around the manor for the first time. Tamlin interrupts her on her way to the garden, and she rebuffs his offer for a tour. He tells her that there has been a blight weakening magic in Prythian for 50 years. He admits that the blight has potential to impact the human realm as well.
All right. Yeah, this chapter really gets kind of
down to the nitty-gritty.
Yeah, you get a lot of information here.
Yeah, and luckily it's not like one of those where it's like snooze fest.
Yeah, no, it was a lot of informing you as she went along.
Yeah, I agree, and it annoyed the crap out of me when Tamlin came in and basically was like, "Hey, baby, you want to take a tour?" No, I don't want to take a tour.
You just
language. This is YouTube.
That's right. Apologies.
I'll edit it out later. Don't worry.
Yeah. But in general, it's funny that he thinks that his good charm can kind of...
It's funny that he thinks he has good charm, but Lucian has told him already, I think twice in the book, like, yo, homie, like,
You're awkward.
You're rusty.
You're awkward. You're awkward.
Your hair is clean.
Yeah.
That's not a flirt. That's not even a compliment. My hair is clean. Thanks, I guess.
That's an observation at that point.
It's a statement.
Yeah. And I think it's funny because when she sets up the trap, and she knows that it's not really going to do anything other than give her a moment.
Well, yeah, it's a moment to run. It's not to harm. It's not to do anything. It's a moment so she can run.
Yeah.
It's an alert system.
Either run, or if she's not fast enough, at least be aware.
Yes.
And that's something that
she mentions.
That she mentions a lot, where she doesn't like not being in total, like, awareness, control, however you want to say that, I guess. And just a lot of the little thoughts she has to herself, she has to have some type of way to control this situation she's in, like how she refused the food because she couldn't trust it, so she needed to control that, because what's going to happen now, the trap. And when Alice just tells her that it's useless, she accepts it. And it's,
for Farah being the hunter, the protector, she's very accepting of things. I don't know if you've caught that. Like,
yeah, she kind of just rolls.
She accepted her death. She accepted that, she can't out-kill these Fae. She ends up accepting that she has to sit down at this table and eat because she literally can't do anything.
I think she's accepted she doesn't really have much autonomy here.
And I think it's so funny that she has such a willing to fight, but at the same time, she not gives up so easy, but it kind of gives off those vibes for a little bit.
I think she's really, really good at hiding her intentions, and it comes off as being a pushover, showing that, like, okay, she will give in, but in her thoughts, she's not giving in.
Yeah.
She's only kind of biding her time. She's willing to give a little in hope right now, she's just hoping for something. Like, she wants to get the lay of the land. She wants to feel safe. She still has hope somewhere right now.
Yeah, there's hope, but at the same time, she's like, I don't trust a single one of you people.
No, like, there's no trust with the people, because these are people she's been told are dangerous and that want to kill her all her life. All her life.
Like, it even says, I think, chapter 2 or chapter 3, that it was, nursery songs. That's how young they were on these impressions.
But from there...
So, do you think it was fair that Pharaoh was held against her will at the table until she ate?
No. Coming from the stubborn girl standpoint, no. At that, they could have built so much more trust by, like, coaxing her over time to get her to eat, because she would have given in at some point, and making it her choice instead of them forcing her to do it, it would have gotten a lot more honey than the kind of scorn that she feels on the inside being forced to do this.
I think my favorite part was, like, she was eating and stuff in her face, and then all of a sudden it's like, poof, gone. She's like, what in the HE double hockey sticks?
Yeah, she's
so like, you wanted me to eat, and I'm getting ready to have second helpings, and he's like, you're gonna barf if you eat anymore. Like, I get it, she was starved, but at the same time, like, but rude. Let her learn her lesson.
It's the condensation.
Condensation?
No. You know what word I'm trying to think
I know exactly what word you're going for, but I can't think of the word. I know what you're thinking of. But anyway, we know what word we're talking about.
Audience, you guys know what we're talking about here. Let's hope we're on the same level. But, like, he's holier than thou in that moment of, like, I know more than you. I know your limits more than you. You have to stop now.
Yeah,
it's more asserting control.
And once again, this is... We discussed it earlier in the episode where it's showing his character.
Yeah.
So we've already seen. I'm gonna just go ahead and point it out because we've seen two things that now I'm recognizing it as well. It's the disrespect and the control. We're seeing those are the red flags we're starting to see with Tamlin.
Yeah,
we will continue to see.
Here's the thing.
Sophie already doesn't like Tamlin, I'm pointing out the red flags to her now. So. She already admits she didn't like him, so now I can point out the red flags.
Yeah, it's for me. Okay, I read enough dark romance that controlling isn't that hard for me to wrap my head around. It's disrespect.
Yes, and he was disrespectful to her
multiple times,
especially when I think it was we were talking about when she had the choice to die or come to Prithia, and she chose to die, and he was like, nope.
No, he doesn't want that guilt on his conscience of killing somebody, I guess, or we don't really know, but like if we're gonna go the nice version, he didn't want the guilt, but at the same time, he has no respect. He thinks he knows more, and yeah, he is older and blah 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 blah. But this whole mentality is so toxic, and I can already tell.
Well, and it's funny, even the question against her will, that's also another red flag.
It's against her will. She doesn't want to do it,
and that's something we'll explore in book 2 is the against her will red flag.
I hate that. That makes me want to scream.
I know, and so it's going to make it hard for you to finish book 1. But like I said, I love this series. It's one of my favorite series. It's what got me back into reading. Mm-hmm. So I promise, you just have to read. Just go with the flow.
You have to tell me where the last chunk of madness is, and we have to read that as one chunk because you can't tell me to stop in the middle of that. Okay.
So we're not doing chapters 1 through 10 in the next book.
No, there has to be I need to be able to finish a good chaos moment, and I need more. I can't stop in the middle.
I honestly think it's within the first 10 chapters, the whole situation thing goes down, and then we move on to the next scene. Okay. So we'll see.
Okay.
But
all right.
Chapter 8.
Chapter 8.
Okay.
Feyre searches the garden for potential hiding spots and means of escape. She hopes to convince Lucien to plead her case to Tamlin and find a way around the treaty. Feyre hears noises and sees a shimmer out of the corner of her eye. She realizes that she's not alone in the garden. Whatever the creatures are, they vanish a moment later. At dinner later that day, Feyre sneaks a knife into the sleeve of her tunic. She thinks angrily about how she is being kept from providing for her family and keeping her word to her mother. When Lucien mocks her lack of knowledge of Fey world by asking what her mother taught her about fairies, she reveals her mother died when she was young. Tamlin offers a sincere condolence. Back in her room, Feyre packs a small bag with extra clothes and the stolen knife in case she has an opportunity to escape. So, I really liked the part in the garden. The garden is so interesting to me because of how they describe what she almost perceives but doesn't really see.
Yeah, where she
sees it with the naked of her eye, in the corner and the little bit.
She sees the glamour.
Yeah.
Because I think later in the book they talk about that's why you never saw anybody around the Spring Court Manor because they were all mannered. They were all mannered. Oh my lord, I'm tired. Glamored, close
That's
enough.
That's right. And I think it was and in specific, I thought it was interesting, and it was a kind of nice difference that these creatures, whatever they were, she didn't feel malicious intent.
Yeah, it was almost like children giggling at her, oh my gosh, a human. We've never seen a human before.
Yeah, very childlike, very innocent. It was much more to be mischievous and to kind of watch her and figure her out than any actual harm or stalking or whatever a malicious entity would do instead. I thought that was really nice because so far she's only really encountered aggressive.
Yeah, they've all been nasty towards her, so she's kind of not sure how she feels about it.
She's not trusting her experience because she at this point only really kind of coincides the negative with the experience, and this isn't negative, but she doesn't know what it is either, and I think that's interesting. Another thing, we have a bit of empathy shown towards the end of the book, end of this chapter, with when it's revealed that her mom died young and all that. Both of them, Tamlin and Lucien, are both awkward in this moment a little bit.
I want to know, did you clock it? It was almost like they knew Sarah's mom.
They kept insinuating that she should know more.
Yeah, but it was almost like a death of a friend, they didn't know that she died.
Yeah,
the way they acted, but then it's your mom didn't tell you about us.
Yeah.
That's That's like finding out you have an uncle you didn't know about.
Yeah, like it's that like family friend that you would know about because they were so close, that type of thing. I did kind of notice that a little bit where there was a familiarity.
Wow, I can't even say
a familiarity with the idea of her mom and how they were talking about her.
Yeah.
So it kind of wavers. Did her mother have an interaction with the Fae at one point? Was there something different in that kind of instance?
And that's my biggest fan theory is that there's a theory out there that says like Nesta is actually like Tamlin's daughter or something like that, or like one of the sisters is actually Tamlin's daughter, or it's something along the lines of that. But it's actually kind of like interesting how, because the story goes, there's a story about Tamlin, and it's I don't know, I can't remember where the story originated from, but there is a story, and that's kind of what the story is based off of.
Okay.
You'll have to look it up, but it goes, he does meet up a human woman, and she tricks him into having a baby, and it's kind of, I could be telling you the wrong story, so if you know the story, please post it in the comments. But it's actually a really interesting story, and that's kind of like, it's like this story plus Beauty and the Beast kind of had a baby.
Right.
That's kind of where this story is coming from.
Okay.
But it's like, I just loved that fan theory that like, oh, maybe that
one of the sisters is actually,
yeah, and it's like that would explain either why Nesta absolutely freaking hates Tamlin. Eventually, sorry, spoiler
Here's
alert.
The thing, Nesta doesn't
like anybody.
Yeah, Nesta doesn't like anybody, so I'm not surprised. But she also despises her father, like her father.
Yeah, her supposed blood father, absolutely.
She despises the hell out of him, so I wouldn't even be surprised at that. But we're a little off track.
Yes.
In this,
so the chapter question is,
yes, what do you think Farrah saw in the garden? Like, what type of fairy do you think was lurking about?
You know, that's an excellent question. Like, I think it was like, since I know that like Alice has nephews, I think it could have been her nephews.
Little kids.
Yeah, I think it was like little kids who were like, oh my gosh, I've never seen a human up close. Like,
yeah,
it was playful manner. So yeah. I feel like it was like a fairy's child, or children fairy.
Yeah,
however you want to say that.
Yeah, I was imagining something like innocent like that as well. I don't really know what the different types in this universe are yet. But truly, I pictured the stereotypical tiny little fairies that are just kind of giggling, and they're like, "Oh my god, there's a human."
Like pixies.
Yeah, like a little bit of that, because I've seen in like different like iterations of fairies, they go off of that and kind of change their shape a little bit with that, and I think it's interesting, and that's just what my mind's eye kind of brought when they were talking about it, because it didn't sound like they were like full humans.
That's why I think it's children, because it's like, yeah, it gives off pixie vibes, but I don't remember
if there's any type of pixie being. I don't know if there is. But I
don't remember pixie vibes in this book. Like,
okay.
Like, I could be wrong, because who knows? Because we have like creatures like the bog, eventually we'll meet another very scary type of fairy, and then we'll meet Serial, who is a very big.
We haven't met the bog yet. We're about to meet the bog.
Yes, in the next chapter, but yeah. I mean, like,
so okay, wait. I was trying to realize where we were for a second. I'm like, wait, we haven't met it yet.
No, but
we're about to.
We're about to meet the bog, and he's a scary. But I'm like, for some reason, I don't remember
what the other one's name is.
Lighter pixie like
kind of like creatures,
fairy
like
type creature species. So that's why I think it's children.
You know, I'll trust your knowledge on that, because
I just don't remember. So
yeah, no.
Who knows? We might be surprised later in life.
We might know. We might not know. We might know. We'll figure it out. If you hear a little barking in the background, I apologize. My neighbors have 2 really yappy dogs that get set off by everything. It's not our dogs this time.
Yep. So I guess it's my turn in reading chapter 9?
Chapter 9.
Chapter 9. In Chapter 9, Farrah plans to find Lucian, who is on border patrol, to win him over and help secure her release. Tamlin interrupts and offers to take her riding, which Farrah refuses, which annoys Tamlin. Farrah finds Lucian and joins him on a hunt instead. Lucian informs Feyre that Andreas used to hunt with him. She recognizes his grief and apologizes. Lucian shocks Feyre when he reveals that he knows that she wants his help. Lucian is flattered that Feyre thinks he could influence Tamlin, but it says there's no way around the treaty. Feyre questions Lucian about the Blight. He tells her the masks are permanent, put in place by a hellish force. He quickly regrets his statement and reveals he fears an unnamed woman finding out what he said. Lucian claims it is the best, and Feyre knows as little as possible about the Blight. Feyre wonders who the woman is and what power she holds. Lucian continues to answer Feyre's questions about the High Fae and fairy powers. He tells her about the Serial, a dangerous Fae who will answer questions when trapped. Suddenly, Lucian orders Feyre to put her bow down, freeze, and look straight ahead. Feyre is filled with fear as she feels an invisible force approaching.
I love this chapter.
Oh, yeah?
I do, actually. I like because it has a lot going on, but it's so seamless.
Mm-hmm.
First, she wants to leave. She turns down Tamlin. That's obviously, that feels like the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's very much on brand for her. She wants to avoid Tamlin. Tamlin is the enemy for her right now. He's the one that's supposedly in charge of everybody, and yada, yada, yada. So, going from there and how she decides that she's going to enlist Lucian's help and try to corner him somewhere to just kind of beg him to talk in her favor to Tamlin. And in doing that, I think it was just really funny because it shows part of her more cunning personality a little more. She's trying more things. She's not just brute forcing it so much.
Yeah, she's trying to be smart about it.
Yeah, and then in every other instance so far, we haven't seen as much of that. Like, we've seen the hunter qualities, and that's part of it, but her really thinking it through, she's doing that a little bit, finally. Like, I feel like I'm actually seeing a little bit of a thought process going on instead of just her reacting to everything.
The brain cells actually work.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, I think my favorite is when she's, like, shocked, like, he already knows, like, yeah, that's not helping.
Yeah.
I'm not helping you, sorry.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny because in that, when they go on the horses, Feyre and Lucian, he's given her a little bit's attitude, and she stands up for herself.
She finally snaps back.
Yeah, she finally snaps back at him in there, and you can see the respect, like, nozzle kind of fill up a little bit more with Lucian towards Feyre, because she's finally showing more personality other than the blank nothing that she's been giving both the High Fae.
Yeah, and I like that in this chapter, Lucian finally opens up and tells her, like, a little bit, like, we have some more information on the Blight.
Yeah.
Like, why, for instance, the masks. I know Sophie texted me, she's like, how much longer are we going to have to deal with these masks? And I'm like, well, the whole entire book. So.
That's so annoying.
And my favorite thing at the end of the book is, so, like, they describe Tamlin as tan. So, like,
yeah,
when the mask comes off, does he have a terrible tan line?
I hope so.
Because that is,
they
don't address it, so it's like it's one of those things you have to just imagine. But it's like it's so funny.
I hope so.
So
I would like that. Okay, let's kind of touch on the creatures that are talked about towards the end.
Yeah, so we have the Serial, who is, like, can answer any question.
He's the one that everyone kind of already thinks about, like the one that has answers, and you have to pay a price for the knowledge that you want.
You have to trap it in order to get answers. And then we get touch on the Bog, which is this really weird misty creature that
it's like, it's malicious, it's evil in a, like, evil in almost like a cruel way. Like,
yeah, it's like Cancer in an air form.
Yeah, like, but like aggressive.
Yeah, and if you don't acknowledge it, you're good. But if you acknowledge it, it will shred you to pieces, apparently.
Right, and it was so interesting because I wonder, I don't know if we'll get, like, the perspective that way, but she thought it was talking to her, taunting her. And when it was doing that, do you think that it was also doing that to Lucian?
Oh, absolutely.
just
I think that's why
pointed towards him too, like not just hearing it
Oh.
talk to her, but
Oh,
it
yeah.
talked to him at
Oh,
the
yeah.
same time, like
Absolutely.
addressing each other separately.
I think it addresses them separately, and I think that's why he pooped his pants a little bit when he
Yeah.
realized it was that bog, because he was like, "Oh crap!
Shit.
Now I've got to try not to acknowledge it again. Now I know what it is."
It
Like,
makes me think of the Bogarts from Harry Potter, to be honest, a little
Oh,
bit. Like,
yeah.
kind of like it forms, it has no shape until you see it, and it forms to your
Worst fear.
worst fear. And truly, everybody's worst fear is death. More than anyone else, everyone fears death. For the most part, like everyone has a certain degree of fear, and like it's the similarities between the two they're interesting. Like the idea of the creatures together.
Yeah. So, would you be would you be able to handle wearing a mask for nearly 50 years?
No, not at all.
Because I know, like, a lot of people had a hard time getting adjusted, like, during COVID.
Yeah.
We had the mask during COVID, and it's like, after a while, I was fine with it, but it was just like,
here's the thing.
it's a different placement.
It's a different placement. First of all, it's up here. Like the masks were
Up
like
here, she's pointing to where, like, her glasses are.
Sorry. Your temple to forehead to like upper cheek level. Like if I was had to wear a mask like that, it would bother me so much because I'm constantly like touching the sides of my eye or the top of my nose. I wear glasses, so how the hell am I seeing if my glasses are falling off the mask?
I think, like, the high fae, I think it's kind of like the whole Twilight thing. Like,
They're perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, you're perfect.
Whatever.
You don't have those issues.
Ugh, whatever.
But
no, but
it's like the thing about it too. It's like you eventually got used to your glasses. How long have you been wearing glasses?
only a couple years, and I still.
Oh, see, I've been wearing mine since 3rd grade, which is 15 plus years.
Yeah, I've only been wearing them for a couple of years, but I get it. You can ignore it, but even when I get home, I take everything off. I am very much a texture sensation person, so like when it was COVID and I had to wear those masks, it drove me insane because I could feel my own breath on me, and it's something I hate more than anything.
But see, that's the difference between
like a lower mask,
the COVID mask versus eye masks. So,
but like I touch my face so much that if I could not like touch my face, it would slowly drive me a little insane. I could get used to it, but I wouldn't. It would drive me crazy a lot longer, I think, than normal people would.
Yeah, I think I would just. It's to me, it's like the same concept as glasses. I eventually got used to it.
Even now, I'm 2 years into this. I'm still kind of uncomfortable wearing glasses all the time. Like I take them off to rest my nose because my nose
pieces.
Yeah, because it's.
But these things are glued to their faces. So think about it. You're sleeping with these masks on. Did you think about that?
Yeah, and I sleep like a freaking maniac. A freaking maniac. And because of that, that would drive me crazy because what if I'm going to be pumping all into that when I'm trying to sleep like side to side? I sleep on my belly half the time. Like, no.
Yeah, that would be... I think that part would drive me nuts. It'd be like I'm suffocating.
Yeah.
So
that just sensation in general like makes me. It just gives me anxiety.
Yeah.
You know.
Thinking about it, absolutely. But so that was chapter 9, and shall I move into chapter 10?
Chapter 10. Here it is. The invisible force hunting Lucian and Feyre is a fairy creature called the Bog. Lucian tells Feyre that the bog only becomes real when it's acknowledged by others. It does not belong in Prythian and their lands, and when they come upon it, Feyre hears the bog in her head pleading for her to look at it. Feyre is filled with terror, but is able to resist until they reach safety. Though he's a warrior, Lucian admits he's not as capable as Tamlin. The two verbally spar over their human and fae misconceptions as they finish their ride in the woods. Tensions rise at dinner when Lucian tells Tamlin about the encounter with the bog. Tamlin storms off to hunt the creature, and later, alone in her room after dinner, Feyre watches the garden for Tamlin's return. Instead, she sees a figure lurking by the hedges. Though she assumes the figure is a fairy, she sees her father.
Yeah, I like that she like acknowledges it's a fae at the end of the book, and then she's like, "Oh my god, it's my father." It's like,
you're so dumb. I'm sorry.
I know it wasn't. Well, it wasn't even that. It was just like you knew it was a fairy, and your brain was like, "That's my dad."
Yeah.
It's like you acknowledged it was a fairy.
You already, like, first thing fairy, second thing dad. She should have, like, in that moment, it's funny how, like, the relief that she goes through, and I'm just so confused because she's already been warned multiple times not to trust what she
Her
sees.
senses.
Yeah. Like, her senses, sees, hears, sounds. She's not supposed to, like, trust that, but, like, already she's falling into that trap a little bit. So it's interesting. This is where I got a little overzealous and I listened a little further because in the dramatized
I was gonna say
version,
the dramatized version.
it does not have much of a break at all.
No, it doesn't. It's my father, and then blah 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 blah.
Yeah, it goes right on. So I listened a little further, and it's just, it's a good way. It's a good cliffhanger to end on. There we go. But I kind of want to focus a little bit about the bog in general.
Yeah, and we do apologize. We talked about the bog in the wrong chapter, but they blend together, so it's okay.
Yeah, because it's so interesting because they almost sense it right before it comes.
Mm-hmm.
And they're able to at least prepare enough to, like, wait for its approach because they have to wait for it to pass. They don't go beyond it until it's moved because they're in a, were they in like a little bit of like a open like little like section in the forest at that point? Like, wasn't it like a clearing?
I don't know if it was a clearing when I imagined this part of the book. I imagined like almost like a path, like with forest on each side. So it's like Lucian, like in my brain, it's like Lucian sensed that it like was gonna cross their path.
Oh, okay.
And so it's like that's why it stopped.
Yeah.
But that's how I imagined it.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting about that. But do you think as the bog, we find out that it needs to be acknowledged by others to actually do any harm? Do you think you can ignore it screaming at you in your ear like it does Farah?
You know, and that's what kind of sucks is like you don't know. Like, I don't know because it's like I've never had that situation. It's like I'm also that person who doesn't do well under pressure. Yeah. I don't like conflict. Mm-hmm. So it's like I'm not gonna look at it. I'll probably curl up into like a, like if I was Farah, I would have curled up probably into the saddle and closed my eyes. Right. It's like, would that count as acknowledging it?
Right, because you're silently acknowledging the fact that you need to hide.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's an acknowledgement in and of itself.
Yeah.
So purely because I have a lot of siblings and they're all brothers, I'm the only girl, and because of that I grew up getting annoyed and constantly like little things whispered back and forth by my brothers to me whenever they really wanted to get on my nerves. I think because I have that experience almost, I might be able to truly ignore it like that. Like, I've learned to dissociate a little bit during like like very loud.
You're very good at dissociating. You even do that at work.
Okay, like especially when there's only like 15 minutes between two deliveries for me, mm-hmm. and I'm not doing anything else in between that time. I'm not gonna be able to finish anything between that time, so I can dissociate that, and I think that's what I do. Is I dissociate in that moment.
Yeah, you do. I would do it at the end of work too, and everyone's getting loud and obnoxious. All Sophie's doing is sitting there scrolling on her phone. I'm pretty sure you're reading fan fictions. She's sitting there, yeah. She's sitting there like all curled up towards her monitor, just sitting there scrolling on her phone. And I have to like get her attention every time I come over to her desk. I'm like, Sophie.
Yeah, because everyone around us are so loud. Like
that's another reason why I moved personally.
Yeah, they're very, very loud. I can't move due to my responsibilities at work.
Job title.
So I have to be where I'm at, and because of how they moved everybody around like last year, mm-hmm. my side of the office is so loud, and I have to wear my noise canceling headphones almost 24/7 to get anything done because everyone is always either yelling across the office, especially, you know who.
Yeah. Yes. Anyway, we went on a little bit of a tangent there, but what's our next question? You kind of asked the first one. Was the
no, I kind of asked the second one. But in the general, like when you imagine the bog, like how do you imagine it? Does it freak you out?
I think when I first read the book, it kind of freaked me out because I think I read it like not even 6 o'clock in the morning because I was when I originally listened to this book, it was audiobook, but I was listening to and from my daycare job, and I think that was like the worst was I only like half listened to this book, so that's why I wanted to read it so badly. But I think when I first imagined it, yes, but it's like now that I'm like, no, there's scarier things in these books.
That's good to know. Because I am a little obsessed with like paranormal, supernatural stuff.
Aren't we all?
Yeah. Okay, if you are on our channel, you should know we both are into the spooky. And so,
language.
yes, spooky stuff. And so, from there, like I imagine almost those shadow people when I think of the bog. I also imagine that like as a shadow, like freaking like mist that just comes across the land and just swoops that way, and that freaks me out because I've seen enough videos of almost shadow things being caught on cameras, or like you can just get the glimpse of it, and that in and of itself, just even watching just like a tiny little clip of that freaks me out. So I would freak out, but I'd freak out internally because I know I can't acknowledge that shit.
Yeah. And so like, my question is like, do you think the bog is like, because obviously Vera is having to stare straight and ignore it. Do you think it's like sitting here in her peripherals, or do you think it's like it's in her vision like this? And I'm crossing my hands in front of my face so you guys can understand what I'm doing here. But like, how do you think this is swirling around her?
I almost think.
Do you think it's just peripheral, or do you think it goes into her vision, but she has to kind of like focus on an object?
I almost think it's kind of like that, but I guess when I was listening to it, I imagined it almost coming from one side of the scene to the other, and as it comes across, it gets louder and like kind of like more insistent as it gets closer and in front of her, and she has to pick a point. I bet like kind of ahead, but up enough to where she can't make direct eye contact with it, but she does see it at that like lower peripheral, so she can get almost an idea of like just what the little things, like how she mentions that it's dark and fog and like light, and it's like you can't really see what it is, but you know that it's there.
Yeah.
And that's why I was thinking almost paranormal in a way, because of that's how a lot of people describe stuff. I think it's almost like she had to pick a point just higher than normal and then just let it come across like in the middle of her field so she could only catch like the top of it almost. Like,
yeah, that's what I personally think is like with like shadow people and whatnot, like you see it out of the corner of your eye. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of why I'm like, I wonder if it was like kind of like swirling,
coming like this
like
way.
It was swirling, like she obviously felt it behind her, and like so it's like I wonder if she kind of like it wasn't
coming
fully
like that.
Yeah,
but
like
it was half circle around you almost.
It was just enough for her to be like, okay, I can see it in my peripherals. I don't want to acknowledge it, but it's like, you know, you have that peripheral vision. You want to look.
You can see just enough for your brain to be like,
there's something there.
Like to figure out, is this a threat? You have to ignore that.
Yep.
Oh, I don't know.
The bog kind of freaks me out just a little bit, to answer your question. Now that we talked a little bit more about it and how it works,
I think it's freaky in that moment, but I feel like we've been introduced to this idea by different like forms of media that it's not as scary. It's just it is uncomfortable to think about, but it does have so many like little like connections to stuff that we kind of already know, like the paranormal stuff, or even just like just creatures in general that are just like kind of just strange. I don't know, but
that's the end of chapter 10,
ending on her seeing what she thinks is her father.
So cliffhanger, big
cliffhanger. And next time we see you, we will be going from chapter 11 to chapter 20.
Yep.
And we'll dive into this crazy mess because it's already gonna be we're gonna start that episode with a bang, it sounds like.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for joining us, and like and subscribe on here as well as our other platforms like Instagram and Fable.
You can find us over there at Valkyrie Reading Room. If you have any questions or comments, or you just want to reach out in general, you can also email us over at valkyriereadingroom@gmail.com.
This has been the House of One Book Club.
Thank you for joining us in the Valkyrie Reading Room. Good night.
Good night.